So, lads, the Fever are officially in the playoffs right now. After a crazy season.
How we clinched, baby!
We can't! W. Playoffs! Bow! Yeah! Playoffs, baby!
The Indiana Fever have officially locked in a playoff berth, but the circumstances were anything but typical. Their blowout victory over the Washington Mystics should have been a night of celebration. Yet, it unfolded in one of the oddest settings the league has seen all season. A sparse crowd, constant clock malfunctions that turn the game into an unintentional comedy routine, and an atmosphere so flat you could hear every echo inside the arena. Fans came expecting fireworks. Instead, they were met with silence. So, the real question is, what does this moment mean moving forward?
Start of the season, you would have given him no chance to make the playoffs. If you would have said Caitlin Clark plays 13 games and she is healthy for none of them. Caitlin's injured the entire season. She plays 13 games at about 50%. If you had said DeWanna Bonner quit on the team after 6 games. If you had said the Fever were going to get a hardship replacement for Caitlin. And then, if you were to say Fever were going to get a hardship replacement for Caitlin, and then her and Sid Colson were going to get injured for the season in the same game. And then if you had said that they were getting hardships. So if you were saying both point guards, and they're not even hardships. Ari McDonald is a hardship. Odyssey Sims is a hardship for a hardship. And then Shea Petty is fifth hardship for hardship.
Clinching in a half-empty gym hardly feels like the historic breakthrough the franchise was hoping for. Instead, it came off more like a muted achievement. Let's face it, the night was supposed to represent a shift, a signal to the league that the Fever are back. But when the cameras panned around and exposed row after row of empty seats, the mood felt underwhelming at best. Broadcasters called it a sellout, but if that was a sellout, then my living room hits capacity every time 2 friends come over. The game served as proof of 2 glaring truths. Caitlin Clark's absence reshapes everything, and the WNBA still has real issues with presentation and optics. Sure, the Fever landed a decisive 94-65 win, but the atmosphere was lifeless, like a soda left open too long. How exactly did we even get here?
She's so crafty with her shot decisions. I was right to the hoop high.
Heading into the night, Indiana knew a win would officially secure its playoff spot. They had momentum from sweeping Chicago and were on track to close the deal. On paper, the Mystics looked like easy prey. A team that once flirted with playoff hopes, but collapsed spectacularly down the stretch. Lifeless, the only word that fits.
Return. And when the Fever announced she was being benched for the rest of the season, those tickets went straight to resale sites or sat unused.
The Fever smelled opportunity and didn't hesitate. Kelsey Mitchell set an early tone even if her numbers weren't electric. 10 points on 4 of 10 shooting isn't superstar level, but her aggression mattered. Supporting her were the players who truly shifted the game. Natasha Howard, Ariel Powers, and Aaliyah Boston. Howard finally looked like the reliable veteran fans had been waiting to see again, putting up 17 and 7 while punishing the Mystics inside. Powers was the engine off the bench with 15 points, injecting life every time the pace risked slowing. And Boston, in typical fashion, anchored the court with a double-double, 12 points and 11 boards that almost looked routine. Role players carried their weight too. Shaw Petty scored 13. Decadantis added 9. Citroen surprised with 17. Kiki Irafan finished with 11. And Lucy Olsen chipped in 4 during 15 hard minutes. If you wanted to find balance, this was it. On the surface, the Fever played how a playoff-bound team should. But the underlying story wasn't on the scoreboard.
It was in the stands.
Cameras revealed swaths of empty seats, entire sections deserted, and a soundscape more reminiscent of a scrimmage than a playoff clinching night.
Why?
Fans had circled this date months ago, expecting Clark's comeback. Once the announcement came that she was being shut down for the season, tickets hit resale sites and stayed unused. That explains the awkward reality. A landmark win witnessed live by little more than family, interns, and a handful of lucky locals. For a historic moment, it weighs really small. Roner, the optics keep rearing their head because they matter. When Clark's on the floor, even near-meaningless regular season games pull in enormous television numbers, 800,000 a times. Without her, this clinching game might scrape together 300,000 viewers. If that, it's a massive gulf, and it emphasizes why the league's marketing engine leans so heavily on her. Without that star power, the product feels subdued. Add to that the bizarre clock issues. Another round of referee huddle sand technical delays popping up across recent WNBA games, and the whole event leaned uncomfortably towards second rate. Fans weren't sharing highlights. They were cracking jokes online about scoreboards that refused to function. Still, you can't blame Indiana's players for any of that. They showed up and handled business. They demolished a Mystics team counting down the minutes until vacation and did what they had to do. Winners, plain and simple. But that doesn't erase the awkward vibe. This moment was supposed to be a statement, but it only underscored how dependent the team is on Clark's presence. And that raises the next uncomfortable question. Was Clark truly too injured to play? Reports have been all over the place. Some suggested she was close to returning. Others that the franchise made the decision to protect its investment long-term if she was even at 90% though. Many believe she should have logged playoff experience. Athletes rarely compete fully healthy. It's part off the grind. Leaving her sideline notably disappointed fans, but also cemented cut against what competitors expect. Natasha Howard even dropped hints suggesting she thought Clark might come back. Proof there was genuine confusion inside the team itself. Frustration feeds on mixed signals, and both fans and teammates felt it. Meanwhile, the Mystics were a shell of themselves. A team that promised potential, but fizzled out like a candle in the wind. Indiana took advantage, but that raises another tricky angle. Does clobbering such a lifeless opponent really inspire playoff confidence? Without Clark, no one considers the Fever a legitimate threat. At best, you pencil them in for a competitive first-round exit. At worst, they bow out quietly. That's not the end of the world. This season was always about growth and next steps. But the narrative suddenly feels less like a triumph and more like a placeholder. It's impossible to ignore the deeper truth. Without Caitlin Clark, the Fever are just another WNBA team trying to grab relevance. With her, they're a national draw, a cultural phenomenon. That gap is wider than anyone would Lakito admit, and this particular game was the perfect showcase. The atmosphere made it glaring. Without her, there was no spark. With her, the Fever transcend basketball and become appointment viewing. And you could feel that from the bench. Players smiled, they clapped, they celebrated, but you knew where the cameras wanted to bring the attention. When the broadcast cut to Clark signing autographs in sweats, that's when social media exploded. Not after Boston's double-double, not after Howard's veteran resurgence, not after Peace Spark. The highlight of the night, Clark interacting with fans off the floor. That in itself said everything. Bronickton, meanwhile, couldn't have looked more disinterested. Rolling over, lifeless, already packing metaphorical bags for Cancun. The Fever didn't saw it clinch, as the Mystic simply gave up. That hits at the bigger issue, league competitiveness. Blowout wins in front of empty seats don't sell to audiences. Without Clark, those lackluster optics are impossible to mask. Stephanie White deserves immense credit for steering Indiana through adversity. The truth, though, is that Clark's arrival changed the franchise culture more than any clipboard decisions did. Without her, no one is framing this as an elite coaching effort. And if the goal realizes player development, White's rotations left plenty of questions. Michaela Timson, for example, logged barely 5 minutes in a game that was well decided dead midway through the third. Instead of letting young talent gain real reps, she leaned heavily on veterans. That contradicts all the building for the future messaging the franchise has pitched. Fans notice when words and actions don't align. The so-called sellout wasn't fooling anyone either. Wide shots told the truth. Upper decks abandoned. Even lower sections patchy at best. Fans who thought they'd witness Clark's return bailed. And honestly, who can blame them? If you bought tickets expecting Beyoncé and ended up seeing a cover band, would you stick around?
Same deal.
The Fever may have clinched a historic playoff spot, but the truth smacked loudly. This team's relevance is fragile.